Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Grow Rogue podcast. Today, I'm joined by Brandon Lee. Brandon is an entrepreneur, and I mean a dyed-in-the-wool, genetically predispositioned entrepreneur. He also has a ton of experience and has a lot to teach and to impart. So you'll definitely want to watch this episode. Brandon and I talk about the difference between a business owner and an entrepreneur and why it's not necessarily a bad thing to be either one of those. We talk about how to use content to establish trust and reputation amongst an audience so that you can drive revenue. And we also talk about some growth levers for business owners and entrepreneurs. You don't want to miss this. Make sure you watch the whole thing. Thanks for joining. All right, so Brandon, one of the really interesting things that we talked about in our pre-interview conversation was this difference between someone who's a business owner and a real entrepreneur. How would you define the difference and maybe describe that journey going from one to the other?
Yeah, I think, first of all, one's not better than the other. I think the difference has a lot to do with personality or the way somebody's wired. I would break it down to simplicity of visionary and moving into something new, like creating something new versus, I could go down and become a State Farm insurance agent and run a business and be a business owner, but you're following someone else's system and you're selling someone else's product and you're coming in to be the owner or the manager of that system or that office, where I think an entrepreneur is just someone who has more a visionary, has an idea, creates something new, and is trying to take it to market or introduce it to market as a new concept. That's the way I would define the difference.
So, and I like that differentiator, right? Between, I even look at my own, experience and background. My dad was someone I'd consider a business owner, right? Mm-hmm. He was a multi-generational business owner. And I would put myself more in the category of entrepreneur. I didn't go into the family business. There was a new thing that I kind of looked at my skill set and, the experience and the opportunities in front of me. And I said, let's make this new thing. So I'd agree with you there. I've heard another definition that I'm not sure how I feel about, right? If you've read the E-Myth, Michael Gerber talks about the different types of business owners, right? There's I think it's the technician, the manager, and then the entrepreneur, and I might even be missing one. And I think that definition and those that adhere to that definition would describe entrepreneur as somebody that actually they're not involved in the day-to-day operations of the business. And I struggle with that one, right? I think when I think of entrepreneurs, that no one would deny they're entrepreneurs. These people are very involved in their day-to-day business. I think everyone would consider, Elon Musk to be an entrepreneur, and he's incredibly hands-on in all of the businesses. Yeah. Now, he's not necessarily filling a specific job in that business on a day-to-day basis, but he's definitely involved. What are your thoughts on that? How do you feel about that definition?
Yeah, it doesn't resonate with me, but that doesn't mean, I'm right, they're wrong necessarily. But I agree with you in the way that you said it. I mean, I think for me, an entrepreneur is somebody who wears whatever hat needs to be worn at a different time. Now, you don't want to stay there. I learned that in my second company, that I was wearing the wrong hat for too long and started to have some burnout. But I think the entrepreneur is the early stages of figuring it out, creating, going to market, having the conversations, learning what's working, what's not working, what's the market telling you, and making the necessary adjustments, or making the decision to say, you know what, this was a good idea that the market's just not interested in. And maybe the market's just not ready. They're not interested. But I believe that's the entrepreneur, is the one that's on the front end. And I look at like someone like an Elon Musk. He has a very important role with Tesla and SpaceX, and that is evangelist and rainmaker.
Right.
And I think that's a very much of a very active and very important role in any sort of entrepreneurial work.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I think this is another one of those key things. You mentioned this, that I'm going to call it like a gene, right? The figure it out gene. I
Hmm.
sometimes want to call it a skill because it's certainly learnable.
Yeah.
But man, that is incredibly common among entrepreneurs. They just have that figure it out gene, right? I don't know the answer, but I'll just figure it out, right?
Yeah.
How important is that ability to quote unquote figure it out to
Mm.
all levels of business ownership and entrepreneurship?
I agree with you. I think it's a gene, it's a trait. I don't think everybody has it. I'll be honest, sometimes I wish I didn't have it. Like there's days and there's seasons where I'm like, man, I wish I would have just gone down the route of a nice stable paycheck and, been a financial advisor or something like that. But yeah, I do think, at least from my experience, and that's all I can really speak from, and maybe some folks that I've learned from and talked to. There's that, hey, I see something here. It's kind of that third eye,
Hmm.
that creativity, that visionary. I see something here. I don't know the exact path, but I'm pretty confident I can go figure it out.
Hmm.
And it's hard because there's personalities that have that. And I think entrepreneurial ventures need that.
Hmm.
But then you have a lot of people around them who, and this has been my personal experience, they don't have that third eye, so to speak.
Hmm.
So they can't see it and they're not confident you're going to figure it out. And so they sit back with a list of questions because they need detail. And the pioneer at the front is like, I don't know the answers, but we're going to figure it out. And you got people sitting around going, and this is where the difference between entrepreneur and potential investors gets really challenging, right? They're sitting around going, I don't see the path. And on the entrepreneur side, it's not that I see the perfect path, but I could see an outline of it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I'm pretty confident because of what I've done in the past and who I am. And there's something intrinsic in me that goes, I think I can figure this out. And you got a bit of a gut, like, do I see enough in here that I think I can figure it out? Or is there not enough here and I shouldn't take the risk? And I think that's what an entrepreneur is a one that could assess that and make a confident decision, or not so confident sometimes, but like, hey, let's take another step and see where it's at. Let's take another step and see where it's at. Next thing you know, you're like 10 steps along. You're like, okay, we got momentum. Let's keep going. Or to have the ability to look at something and go, I'm just not seeing it. I invested in a company that it was kind of that. I'm like, I think I can see this. I invested in it. I got involved. And then, like 6 to 8 months in it, I'm like, I don't see this anymore, especially with the team that was in place and where they were taking it. And then I couldn't take my investment back, but I pulled myself out of the day to day of it because I just couldn't see the path with clarity and confidence. And people around me didn't understand what I was doing. Right. They'll, like, oh, why are you quitting on this? I'm like, I'm not seeing it. The team that's put in place, they're not getting it. Their view of where they think it needs to go, I'm not aligned with. And the hard part with that, I think, probably for a lot of people listening to your show, they're either like, oh, I totally get that, Brandon, or they're sitting there like, what the hell are you talking about? Because it's one of those things that it's that innate trait that I think people either have or they don't.
Okay, so I think both of those types are necessary in those specific roles, right? I think in the way I'm hearing that is like you kind of have your entrepreneur, we'll say your entrepreneur glasses, right? And I've described it as like walking down a dark tunnel and you've got a flashlight. That flashlight's not going to show you the end of the tunnel. It's going to show you far enough to be able to keep going, right? Or decide you need to move or pivot or
Yeah.
whatever. And so when you've got your entrepreneur glasses on, that's how you see the world. And what I hear you describe is that you kind of took your entrepreneur glasses off and you put your investor glasses on. And I think that's a very smart way to look at business as an investor because that is your entrepreneurial venture there. It's, I'm going to put money to work and it's going to bring me back more money. It's that simple, right? So if it can't make a lot of sense, and especially given that you probably weren't as involved in the day-to-day, I would imagine, as you are in businesses that you founded and that you're leading personally. So that is super interesting, right? And that's probably one of those skills of super advanced entrepreneurs that most people never really get to. And I think, and this is probably where we can transition kind of over into the type of businesses that you're in now, right? Because you've done this enough times before to be able to tell probably a lot faster than other people, I can see where this is going, or I can see this working, or I just don't, right? Just as you
Yeah.
described.
Yeah. And it's not perfect, I mean, none of us are perfect with it, but, I believe that, from our own personalities, like I went through this leadership training program that focused on Myers-Briggs. And then there's a book, I may have it around here, I can't remember, but it's called The Five Voices, and there's different types of voices. And my voice is a pioneer, which even without knowing how they define it, just by the word, most people can imagine what the pioneer is. So I was an ENTP on Myers-Briggs, extroverted, intuitive, thinker, and perceptive, very intuitive person, visionary. And then they threw the pioneer voice on me on top of that, where that's who I am. And you look at that and go, yeah, that's exactly who I am. I can see things. Now, the challenge with that is, and I equate it to, I think of it as a lot like prophets. If you look at the Bible and the prophets, a lot of times the prophets were saying things that people just didn't get, like they couldn't see it. And this isn't, I think it's a blessing, and it can be a curse at times to be a visionary like this, because you see things that most people don't see. And because you can see it, you think it's there.
Right.
But just because you see it doesn't mean other people see it. And if collectively they don't see it, it's not there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
well, there's that like acceptance that, wait, you all can't see that, right? It's not as clear to you. That's a learning. That's one of those like stages of learning as an entrepreneur, that it's got to be more, or it's got to be clear to more people than just you, right? Or you've got to be able to translate that to others in their specific roles.
Yeah. And that's the part of testing the market and having, I mean, I learned this the hard way. My first couple of companies were successful. And then I had a company that I saw it. This is perfect. Let's go do it. And I'm like, what happened? Like, why? And I was in conversations that were really, really frustrating because I could see it and they couldn't see it. And I failed, but it was well, I like John Maxwell. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. What I learned in that situation is that just because I see it doesn't mean it's ready. It doesn't mean it's right timing. And just because I see it doesn't mean I should move forward with it. There's a time to start testing in a very low expense way to see if it's got movement, and then add a few customers, and then start to add money to it. And that's kind of where I'm at with my company now, is that over the last 18 months, we held it somewhat loosely, even though we thought we knew we were going, and it's pivoted a little bit. Not the foundation of what we thought was right is right, but the way that we're going to market is pivoted, and it's been very insightful. And I don't think I could have done that had I not had my previous failure, where I went all in going, I see it, let's go sell this. And people didn't buy it. And it sucked. It sucked. But the win of it was that I finally had the maturity to pull myself back and go, okay, what can I learn from this?
Yeah, there you go. I mean, I'm going to go back through this episode and I'm going to start tallying up, and I'm going to put on a list of like these different stages of entrepreneurship. And one of them you just described is learning through failure. Because I heard another quote that was like, it may have been, I'm going to pull a football reference. I actually think this might have been like a Kirby Smart or a Nick Saban thing, where they said, you don't really learn anything by winning, right? You celebrate.
Yeah.
You learn when you lose, because then you get to look and see the things that you can improve and the things that the next time you'll do better.
Yeah.
And I can certainly identify with that, right? When I look back at, because I started my first business when I was 20, and it was a terrible disaster and a failure, right? And then I've had this business since 2014, so it's been 10 years. I actually think it's going to tell me on LinkedIn, so I'm sure one of these days that I've hit my 10-year anniversary. But I can, without question, look back at really pivotal moments that helped the business do much better. And they all came out of not so fun scenarios, right? I don't know that I'd call them all total failures because it didn't kill the business, but it was like, that ain't the right direction, or
Yeah.
that didn't work, right? So what are we going to improve? What are we going to trim? What are we going to do more of? And how are we going to get to where we're going? And if I can, Brandon, I actually think that's a great segue over to the marketing piece, because we talk a lot about kind of learning and marketing through iteration. And so for those of you listening or watching, Brandon's a marketing guy like me. Brandon and I own similar businesses, but in different spaces, right? Different approaches, but there's enough overlap, which I'm excited to talk about. So let's transition a little bit over to the marketing piece. I mean, you're the trade show king. Let's talk to me about that, right? Talk to me about your unique approach to digital marketing and that your business takes.
Yeah, and I would say, we're trade show and then live show podcast is where we focused. And to use our previous conversation to try and bridge it, what I saw was the power of CEO reputation in LinkedIn as a way to grow all areas of the business. And there's some great examples out there of CEOs that just naturally embraced social media. They, as we say, showed up consistently. They created content. They engaged with people. And as their reputation grew, their business grew. And I saw that and went, oh my gosh, this is what companies need to do. And we start talking to companies about that and CEOs about that. And this is where I learned from before. I had a lot of really great conversations, but long sales cycles and a lot of no's. Good conversation, but still became a no. Oh my gosh, I totally need to do this. LinkedIn is everything. Oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. Punt it to next month. Oh yeah, this is great. Punt it to next month. And because of my failure, I started asking different questions. And here's what I learned is that CEOs were scared. Bottom line, they were scared to put themselves out there. And so I still believed the foundation of it, but the way we were going to market with this executive brand program and some of the tech that we built around it wasn't going to work. And so we pulled a step back and said, okay, how do we take what will work and apply it in a way that they will accept it? And that's where we ended up looking at trade shows and live shows and podcasts, because they could see a more tangible connection between revenue from those. Traditionally, trade shows were the biggest revenue or the lead generator of a year for a lot of companies. And I know they've trended down in post-COVID and all that, but they're coming up. And what I heard from CEOs is, yes, we're going, no real confidence. Right. And they saw it as an expense instead of as an investment. And we thought, you know what? We can add this element of the content on LinkedIn and the consistency of it and building trust ahead of the show, the trade show, and focusing on the two things that we focused on before, which was our qualitative goals of, oh my gosh, I see you everywhere and I feel like I already know you. And when we accomplish those, opportunities happen, because when they see you everywhere and feel like they know you, when you send an email, they respond. They tend to respond more often.
Right.
You make a call, they tend to respond more often. You promote a webinar, they tend to respond more often. Or you're in a booth and they walk by, they tend to walk right in because they go, oh my gosh, I see you everywhere and I feel like I already know you. So the two qualitative goals that we focused on were still totally relevant. And then the KPIs that we focused on were your network growth or your connections on LinkedIn, conversations, and then opportunities and revenue. And so what we were able to do is go, hey, this is still relevant. It still works, but they're not ready to just pull out their phone and be like, hey, let me do a selfie and tell you, what I'm observing in my space. And we had a great framework, right? Just talk about, what do you observe? What do you think? And what do you feel is going on in your industry? And those that have the confidence or the oomph to do it, that works really well. But I found the majority of them, they get this in front of them and they go, I don't think I can do it. And they wouldn't. And so we shifted, we pivoted. Okay, let's do this in a trade show format. And what we do is, just like any other trade show strategy, there's pre-show, at show, and post-show. But instead of emailing everybody going, hey, we're going to be at the booth, come see us, we're creating content and video content and getting it in front of them ahead of time so they want to come see you because, hey, I see you everywhere. I feel like I know you. I've been listening to your stuff. I'm going to walk right in your booth and go, hey, I keep seeing you all over my phone. I want to learn more about this. And then at the show, we do video, we do some geofence strategies with video from the booth. And then my favorite, to be honest, is the I was there strategy. We do a lot of video from in the booth, and then we use it for like 3 months after the show in paid campaigns and organic campaigns. Because if any of us are honest, and I could tell you how I came across this, the I was there pulls us in. We see something, we see a video and I was there. I watch it because I was there. Our egocentric selves go, watch that video. I was there. And even when they're watching it, they're looking in the background going, ooh, maybe I walked by while this was being recorded, or, oh, I saw that booth and I saw that person. We get a lot of play. We get a lot of brand awareness. We get a lot of brand recognition by using those videos for months after a trade show.
I really, really like that strategy. And here's another one of those takeaways, folks who are listening, right? Brandon figured out how to do something that was needed, and he figured out how to sell it to somebody that was already spending money in that area, right? You mentioned that they were seeing this as more of a cost and not an investment. And so you said, well, what if we could help you really start to see that as an investment? They're already spending. We know how much money companies are spending on trade shows every year. In a lot of cases, it's like the bulk of their, marketing budget.
Yeah.
And so for a little bit more, you can get a significantly more higher benefit out of that investment. So I love that as a business model. And I am with you on all of the tactical elements of it. So to drill down a little bit further, I mean, in this, I think you touched on as well, right? Founders, executives, and sales leaders and stuff are usually really effective, really enthusiastic and charismatic in person. But when you turn that camera on, it's like I'm not talking to a person anymore. I'm talking to a device. So how do you overcome that, right? Like tactically, right? Like in that moment, what do you do to kind of relax them or to get them talking about things that they're comfortable with? Or how do you just create an environment where they can speak a little bit more casually and comfortably?
Yeah. We use interview style.
Yeah.
I mean, much like this. It's not perfect because people who are nervous are nervous. But the interview style really helps a lot. And I'm sure you've experienced this too. So whether it's our trade show program, we bring them on to a show that we have that's called the Trade Show Show. We strategize. We have 4 simple questions. We want to bring them down the hero's journey. So we have 4 questions we ask them. And we bring several people from their team, some of their customers on the show, and we interview them. And so a couple tactics that I do. I did this actually. This was at a trade show, one of the in-booth videos with the CEO of a company. We did the interview, and he was really uptight, like really nervous and everything. So we were done. I walked over. I looked at the video. I went, gosh darn it. I screwed up on the sound. Can we do that again? He's like, oh yeah, I am so sorry that this plug, sometimes it doesn't get in. Let me test it. And I tested it and I'm like, okay, it's working. And we did it again. And the second time he was
So
so
much
much
better.
more comfortable.
Hmm.
So if you're my client out there listening to it,
Hmm.
but that's one thing I do. But the interview style, the trade show, we bring them on. And here's what I like about it, Reade, is they're nervous, but we as interviewers can help them be a little bit less nervous and get some of that energy and that passion out. And so it's things like sitting there listening and go, wait a minute, did you just say, oh my gosh, that is amazing. Can you elaborate on that? And all of a sudden they feel my energy and it like releases them to lighten up
Hmm.
and to get excited about it. And so if I have them on video alone, I'm sitting in the back going, like, lighten up, right?
Please smile. Yeah.
Yeah. But when they're on an interview and it's an interview for them about their company and all that, I have the ability to raise the energy, lower the energy, to focus on things and really help them identify that this is exciting stuff. And then to get excited about it. And a lot of them, they believe it's exciting. They believe they're doing good stuff. They're just so nervous because of the camera. And what I find is that when I up and down the energy, they tend to forget the camera's there. And then we just have a chat and it comes out as a much better piece of content.
Yeah, I actually thought you were just going to say you just ply them with drinks and that helps them relax. No, we've done something really similar, right? We work with a lot of attorneys, and a lot of other industries where there's a lot of, interpersonal connection that they make, but not a lot of, public speaking, certainly not a lot of video stuff. And yeah, we've found that if we can get them on video with a colleague or with a client that they've got a really good relationship with,
Yeah.
the relationship tends to, I guess, dominate their mentality, right? Or their mind in that moment, right? And they're not so focused on the camera. And this is another thing. I haven't really been too concerned. Maybe I'm wrong about this. I haven't been too concerned about even having them look at the camera, right? I tell them I stand behind the camera usually, or if it's virtual, I'll be there. But I'll say, look, y'all just talk, right? Talk to each other, and then consider me a third person in the conversation, because they'll naturally look over at the person behind the camera, and that gives it that almost includes the audience, I think, in the experience. That has helped a lot. Anytime we can have two people are there, the conversational, like you said, it just changes things completely. I think the days of me sticking, a camera in our clients' faces and just having them, say something they're supposed to say, because I can't even do that really well. And I'm in front of a camera every day. So yeah, that's a good tactic.
Yeah, and we do the same thing with our live show and podcast services that we offer. I generally tell companies, have 2 or 3 hosts, because what I found in my first show that I started, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, and then eventually shut it down, I was the only host. And number one, you come off a little bit egocentric, and some people, they've got reputation, they can pull it off. But for me, it just seemed a little bit of like, hey, look at me, I'm the host of my show. But the other thing is, it's hard to be a sole host.
Right.
You're listening to them. You're trying to plan where you want it to go. You're listening to respond, but at the same time, you're thinking of where you want the conversation. Like, I just didn't have the skill set to do it. Of course, I did my best, but now with our show, we have 3 hosts, meaning that sometimes we all travel, which means it's always a higher likelihood that there's going to be at least 2 of us available to host. And then when there's 2 of us hosting, I find it gives more opportunity to be thoughtful and have better answers, because I don't have to be the one that's always focused on leading everything.
That's right. Brandon, I love the strategy. I love the way that you go about business. I think we immediately connected when we first spoke, because I think there was a lot of that, that being able to see the scars in another entrepreneur. I've talked about this in past podcasts, right? And so I like the way that you go about business. I'm really glad we're able to have this conversation. I could certainly continue this for a really long time, but to be, just to be protective of your time, what's one more thing that you'd like for the audience to take away from this conversation?
Yeah, I think revenues through reputation. It's always been that way. You can go back 50 years and it was about networking. Who went to the diner in the morning where all the business people hung out or whatever. Who goes to the right networking events in the evening? How often do you go? Do you work the room? Business has always come about on who you know and who knows you. That's why we call it revenues through reputation. We just live in a modern world now where so much of it happens here. And whether you're a guest on someone's show, thank you, Reade, for letting me be a guest, and getting your reputation wider in front of more people, or you're consistently creating content, commenting on other people's content, and using this medium of social and digital, you've got to focus on that as your reputation. And your reputation isn't just, do they know you? It's, are you consistent enough? Do you have the proximity to them that they start to trust, have a little bit of a trust, which goes deeper into, do they have confidence in you? And then it's got to go into the competence. It's not just, oh, I see you, I trust you. But I think that I see you consistently is the beginning of building trust and getting some confidence because they see you everywhere and talking with lots of people and having lots of content. And then the quality of your content is where that confidence comes in. And I think if you can hit that trifecta, then you really are focused on, hey, I'm growing my revenues through my reputation. And I believe right now, I spoke to a CEO of a company over the weekend who said, we had a board member who came in and said, hey, we got to get a VP of sales in here. We got to do this, and hired somebody. They hired 8 salespeople. They put all these systems in place per the VP of sales. And in 9 months, they had spent $1 million and had nothing to show for it because they were focused on what I call the old school outreach. Cold calls, cold emails that are really, really challenged right now. They're very, very challenged. So when you're focused on that reputation, when you start making calls, as I said earlier, more people respond because they go, oh, I see you everywhere. I feel like I already know you. And they do that because of this thing in front of us, this camera, right? This medium of digital. And like this show, like it's going to go on your podcast. We'll take it and we'll repurpose it in our podcast. Right. Maybe we take some shorts and put it in different places. You're going to talk about me. I'm going to talk about you. And this is going to grow both of our reputations into each other's networks. And what I also like about doing shows from a content standpoint is it's a lot easier for, normal people just to have a chat, talk about their 20-year history or talk about the things they've learned and done in their 20, 25, 15-year, whatever history and business, and just have a chat. And then turn that into content that we put in front of people all over the place. And that's how we build your revenues through your reputation.
That's right. No, I couldn't agree more. We talk a lot about the difference between lead generation and lead trust, right? Which is, yes, they know who you are now. Congratulations. But do they trust you that you can do what you say you'll do, that you will do what you say you'll do? And frankly, in this, I love how you referenced the way things were done, 50, 70 years ago when my grandfather was starting a business, which was, can I see myself working with this person, right? Which is just, I don't care how, how technical and how professional an environment is. If I can't see myself working with this person on a regular basis closely towards a goal, then I'm just not going to be that motivated to move forward. And we can do all of those things through video, through content, in a way that it's just really, really difficult to do in any other way.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate your perspective and you taking the time to spend with me today, Brandon. We will make sure to include links to all of Brandon's websites and how you can get in touch with him on LinkedIn. He's a great follow on LinkedIn. That'll be in the show notes and in the description here on YouTube. Brandon, thank you so very much for taking the time to be with me today. And I'm really excited about our next conversation.
Yeah, Reade, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you all. Make sure to like and subscribe to this video. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And we'll see you all in the next one.